Oh, let's bring him in. The Berman. Zack Berman.
Oh, that backdrop.
For Vinny night, he has brought his A game.
What's up, Zack?
For the backdrop.
Vinny, congratulations, man. Vinny, congratulations. Yeah,
Thank you, man.
there's a player on the team who you can probably guess who it is. He's like, I heard what you and Vinny were saying, and I was like, what Vinny and me were saying. Yeah, so you probably guess who that was.
I hope it was good stuff.
It was Trevor Keegan.
No, yeah, it's someone always looking for motivation.
That's a classic Brandon Graham bit. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So Zack,
exactly.
We'll start with what the locker room was like because that was certainly the biggest win of the season in terms of the stakes going into the game and the way that they pulled away in the second half. What was the general feeling in the locker room?
So if we're continuing the music theme that we do for all the postgame shows,
this could be good.
Saquon Barkley is by his locker speaking, and the song is "Don't You Worry About a Thing," right? And maybe it was apropos because you saw Saquon in the fourth quarter there really close the game out, but around the locker room there were two more prevailing sentiments, more so than like how good Saquon was. Although there was a player who walked by me on his way out and was like, "Thank God we have Saquon Barkley," right?
Nice.
But
wait, is this "Don't You Worry About a Thing"?
Yes,
that one?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, exactly. I'm glad you sang it.
I'm trying to have your back.
Yeah. So thank you, appreciate that.
Tori
So so there were two sentiments really. First off, the defense, right? The way this defense is playing. You know, we'll get to it. CJ Gardner-Johnson said that fourth down stop like explains everything you need to know about that defense, right? And then the other thing was the offensive line, and that the way Saquon ran, the way Kenny Gainwell runs, those were offensive line driven as much as anything else. You guys heard Nick. I know you had him on. Nick was really talking about how they're a tough team, but in the locker room, what you kept hearing was the way the offensive line in the fourth quarter like imposed their will. Yeah, I spoke to a few different offensive linemen who, because when Gainwell had those two runs, those guys were more demonstrative than you typically see. And I asked them why, and they're like, those were plays they had in there. They were waiting to run them there, that trap play, and you know, they called it at the right time and it worked. And so like that's what it was.
Fran's calling it out live on the watch along. He's like, they haven't run that all year long. And then on the very next play, they do a different one that they haven't run all year long.
Well, Fran hit it on the head because I asked two guys independently, Mekhi Becton and Lane Johnson, and they both said exactly what Fran said. Like, it's a play we were holding on to. We ratted it and it worked as designed. And then the defense, like what is there not to say about the defense and that fourth down stop in particular, and just the praise around the locker room for Zack Baun. And I got a chance to speak to Zack Baun. So those were the overriding sentiments, and then some other stuff that they need to work on for sure. You know, Jalen Hurts was harping on the red zone in particular, that they need to finish in the red zone. And that was the problem early in the game. But, you know, CJ Gardner-Johnson said as he was walking into the locker room that the division goes through the Eagles. And when he was asked about it, he said he's not doing any clickbait here. He says, this is kind of how it's been. The NFC East goes through the Eagles. He says he has respect for Washington, but the NFC East goes through the Eagles. And at least now, you know, because I heard what you said before I came on, and when if you think back to our post-game shows, when it was Jamie, you and me, I'm speaking to Bo here last year, at this time, you know, you think about the Buffalo win or the Miami win. It was like they're so there's a long season ahead, but to be 8-2 right now for a game and a half up in the NFC East, that's a good situation for these guys.
No doubt about it. And we do agree. I mean, the defense was awesome tonight. Those three consecutive stops on second, third, and fourth and short really was the turning point in this game. I think. What did they say aside from CJ Gardner-Johnson about that being such a big swing?
Yeah, so I was actually interested in the specifics of the play, and you know, Zack Baun said you can do all the tape study you want, but you have to react when you're there. Like he didn't know where where Jaden Daniels was going to go on the play. They had an idea of it, but he said you can't account for a bobbled snap. And then he talked about he didn't know if Daniels was going to cut in when he went around the side. You just kind of have to have physicality. You have to be disciplined there. And he made the play. I would say overall, one thing it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson who said this. The game plan, Vic Fangio's game plan was to make Jaden Daniels be a quarterback, right? And to have him try to beat him that way. And CJ said no one's going to beat them deep. So I know that's not about the fourth down play in particular, but that was, and we saw that was their game plan. It was don't let Jaden Daniels beat you with his legs. And on that fourth down play in particular, they obviously had push that helped. The mishandled snap or whatever it was that contributed to it. But Zach Baun just made a huge stop, and Jalen Hurts was talking about like what Zach Baun brings to the team. Other guys were saying it too. Zach Baun was saying all this attention for him, it's making him a little uncomfortable because like he's not the way he is off the field as he is on the field. He's like he's kind of reserved off the field, and he actually has to like work himself into a frenzy before the game. But he says he comes off like confident and tough and intimidating on the field, and that's kind of not what he's like off the field. So he's kind of getting used to all this attention right now.
That's interesting.
He deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wonder, like, is he getting texts from his old Saints teammates like, dude,
where was this?
What's going on? I thought I knew you.
Yeah, he was speaking about all this inside linebacker stuff, and he's like, he said he at his opening press conference, he kind of answered the way he did because he didn't know where he was going to play. He thought maybe inside linebacker. He didn't, and then it was funny as someone who's kind of been studying Vic Fangio. If you'll appreciate this. It was kind of framed to him like, what was that conversation like with Vic Fangio when you were told you're going to be an inside linebacker? It's like, it wasn't a conversation. It was just that, yeah, that's where I was assigned to go. And I went and played there. Like, it wasn't like there was no pomp and circumstance to it. Right.
On the offensive side of the ball, aside from Saquon, Zach, the passing game, not their best night tonight. First of all, what about Jalen getting his bell rung and getting checked for the concussion? I was there next to you. You're doing a very good reporter. You're standing up. You got your binocs out. You're just looking for, is Jalen coming out? What was that scene like on the field? And then are you worried about, Devontae Smith's lack of integration into the offense at the moment?
Yeah, good questions there. So the Jalen Hurts of it all, it's weird when it happens right before half, right? Because you don't know. Obviously, everyone goes into the locker room, right? So you don't know if he's going into the locker room
tenders.
for. You don't know if it's for that or if it's just that he was cleared. Now it turns out that he was cleared before he went into the locker room. But Jalen said, by the way, there's nothing to it. He cleared the protocol. He doesn't have many more details to offer other than that. Says that I guess I cleared it. But then there was a funny line when someone was asking about the Gainwell plays, and he was like, "I don't remember what you're talking about." And he's like, "That's probably not the best thing for me to say right now."
Hey, Jalen made a joke.
Yeah.
Wow,
Jalen made a joke
good.
there.
Shocking.
I laughed. Sometimes like there's like the fake reporter laugh, where the guy doesn't actually say something funny, but that was actually a funny line, I thought. But no, so the scene there. So when Jalen comes off the field, and we all saw the hit, like I saw
it was a big
him
hit
on the ground there, and I was eyeing right away. All right, is he going to get evaluated? And Tom Hunkley, the head trainer, was going over, chatting with him on the bench, and then Tom goes and talks to someone else. And so I was like, all right, Jalen's fine. Jalen's not like following him there. But then next thing you know, the blue tent's up. Jalen's in the tent. The half ends. Everyone's going off the field. The tent's still up. About 30 seconds later, Jalen comes out. He jogs into the locker room. Then he's the last one out, coming onto the field in the second half. This isn't atypical. He's usually the last one out, coming onto the field in the second half. But there was obviously intrigue there. and then he went right to the exercise bike. And when he went to the exercise bike, I'm like, all right, he's good. He's not going on the exercise bike if he's not coming back out here. And yeah, I mean, he played a little bit better in the second half. So to the second part of the question, this Devontae thing, this is going to be important for us to monitor. Devontae was, I thought, slow getting touches tonight. You saw the play up the middle of the field, like what Devontae can do for this offense. But this is a passing offense that's I don't want to say disoriented right now, but is not maximizing what it can do. Like AJ Brown, with the matchup he had, could have been a 100-yard receiver tonight. Devontae can be that type of player most weeks, and it's not there. And they should have done more against the Commanders defense. Now, Jalen said 450 yards of offense. You can't really complain about that, right? And Jalen was really more harping on not finishing in the red zone. But I do think they need to get this passing game going better than they have.
No doubt about it. Last thing from me, any concern or word in the locker room on Jake Elliott's misses?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to speak to Jake. He was talking when I was talking to some other guys. But Nick Sirianni said Jake's kicked clutch kicks before. I heard players in the locker room saying, Jake's still the best, in the league, that kind of thing. But look, me speaking here, this has to be on your radar. And by the way, I remember the Ravens preseason game. I'm asking Nick, any concerns about Jake? Right? Because I mean, this has been going on since the preseason, and the inconsistencies, I've seen Jake Elliott, Vinny has a Super Bowl ring in part because Jake Elliott was money that year, right? What?
No, I said the same thing. We're on the same page.
Okay. Yeah. And last year, right behind me here, Jake Elliott.
He was their MVP last year.
Yeah. So, but something's off right now. And we've seen it with Justin Tucker down in Baltimore. The best kickers go through it. But when you get to December, January, maybe February, you can't be missing the volume of field goals that he's missing. And, you look at Buffalo last year. Buffalo had a great kicker. Misses a makeable kick in the playoffs, and Kansas City advances. So I don't want to be Deebo Samuel or like LaShawn McCoy here and be like, it's not a real member of the team, but like the kicker has to make those kicks, right? And I think Jake Elliott would tell you the same.
So Zach, after this game, I'm curious in the Berman rankings, which storyline gets more steam here? Saquon Barkley for league MVP or Quinyon Mitchell for defensive rookie of the year?
By the way, somebody in the chat said his odds tonight went from plus 1,600 to plus 300. Quinyon.
Woo.
I would say Saquon. I would say Saquon MVP. MVP is more prestigious, and I think Saquon MVP is kind of the sexier topic. But Quinyon,
speak for yourself. Jamie's got himself all riled up
over here, Zach. Somebody give me a cigarette.
So Richard Sherman was chatting with Quinyon after the game, and a different reporter asked Quinyon, what was Richard Sherman saying to you? And Richard Sherman's message was catch the ball. And there's because if you want Quinyon to be defensive player of the year, it's not going to be because of the PFF grades. It's going to be, defensive rookie of the year. It's not going to be because of the PFF grades. There's going to have to be more play. Yeah, there's going to have to be more plays on the ball. Now tonight, the ball wasn't really thrown in his direction, right? But yeah, there's going to have to be more plays on the ball, presumably. What Saquon's doing here it's just otherworldly. Yeah, I put this number out there. It'll be in my story tomorrow. The Eagles had 1,000-yard rushers and Pro Bowlers the past 2 years. Combined, those two guys, Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift, did not have the amount or the volume of 100-yard rushing games that Saquon Barkley has this season. Think about that. Like what Saquon is doing here is it's relatively it can't. I guess something can't be relatively unprecedented. It is it's without compare in Eagles history, or at least modern Eagles history. And he's the leading rusher in the NFL. And he is, look, Jalen, AJ, Devontae are probably not having like the overall seasons that maybe they could. And Saquon's been the guy. And, Lane Johnson said he saw this early in training camp. And he said the other thing about Saquon is like how well Saquon's fit in. And like I think Lane called him tonight the glue of this locker room. So Saquon's been a real big piece of what they're doing.
So
here.
he said a franchise record tonight, most 140 plus yard games with multiple touchdowns. He did it for the third time this season. That's the most in franchise history, not just in one season, in franchise history. And
they play 10 games. And in theory, I mean, I'll defer to Vinny on this, but one thing that players always say is that it's harder to stop the run in December in the cold weather, right? And so we haven't even, and by the way, after next week in LA, the Eagles don't fly again. 4 of their last 5 games are at home. There's going to be, and it's against teams that are going to be out of it. There's gonna be some guys making business decisions out there, I imagine, who are gonna be like, the fourth, the third quarter of a 2-touchdown game. Do I want to be do I want to be getting in Saquon's way?
You might go
right?
for 200 a game.
Yeah, when Cabo's calling, right? So I mean, look, Saquon might be looking at 1,700, 1,800. I mean, dare I say 2,000 yards. He's been that type of player.
So, Zach, Tony Gonzalez just said it on the broadcast. He thinks the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. If Zack Berman had to pick Lions or Eagles right now, who you got?
I'm going Detroit because, I just think like Detroit's A game this year, I think's been better. But look, the Eagles are going to be in the thick of this here. And it's going to be great. It's going to be fun to watch. I just have to think. I look at the way Detroit finished last year, the way they played in the postseason. They were better at the end of last year. I think they've been more consistent this season. But with the way this Eagles defense is playing, and look, Detroit lost Aiden Hutchinson. The Eagles had all 22 starters healthy tonight. So we'll see how this goes. But I just think the Eagles are 8-2. And they have one more flight left. And like I said, they're at home throughout December. There's a chance you're looking at a 12-13 win team.
Yeah, they could be a 1 seed very easily.
Yeah.
There
you go.
And that changes everything. As we like, it's much different. It is much different if you are the 2 seed, and you have to win 3 games, and you have to go to maybe Detroit. And we all heard what that stadium was like last year when the Lions hosted a playoff game, against the Rams. Compare that to a first round bye and teams having to come in here and win. If the Eagles and Lions were playing on this field on what, January 25th or whatever, I would take the Eagles in that game.
There you go. All right, Zack Berman. It's after 1 o'clock.
2 quick things.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to let you go.
1 o'clock.
We got to get Vinny to sleep.
My bad. Yeah.
No,
I'm
now
sorry.
I need to hear these final observations.
Give us your things.
I'll just give one thing because Bo and I have a show.
Zack.
Yeah, no. Bo and I have a show in 13 hours, so we can talk about it. But the play that a lot of people were talking about in the locker room was Grant Calcaterra's fumble recovery. I spoke to Grant Calcaterra about this, and Grant was like pumped about it too, because he's like, this is exactly what they're coached up on. And he said he was actually running, he was sprinting downfield to make a block because he thought Dallas was going to cut in. But that's a type, the game could be different if that doesn't happen. So that play came up, and then everything else we can kind of touch on tomorrow.
No, give us the other thing. You said 2 things.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like the overall, what CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mentioned it before, but like the confidence that this team has, and CJ, who's I don't know if I would say reliable narrator, but because he always kind of has that bravado. But when he was talking about this defense and he was kind of asked about how this defense compares to 2 years ago, and he's like, everyone can play, all three levels, everyone can play. And just
Who was he throwing under the bus?
I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what that was referring to. And then the other thing I'll throw in there is there's just a lot of Jalen Carter love in that locker room too, for the way Jalen Carter was playing.
Yes, I think I don't know how much we taled about it, but
He was a beast.
This was his second best game of the season. He was fantastic tonight.
Well, I want to. I feel like every dropback pass, he was damn near getting a hurry.
Yeah.
Some type of. He dominated.
And
tonight.
Zach, you and I were sitting next to each other. It felt like early on, he got into it a little bbit, and I think it was actually the long Austin Eckler play where there was some pushing and shoving afterwards that got them riled up. And I was like, I nudged you. I was like, "Oh, Jalen Carter's like ready to go now. This is they've lit his fuse."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome watching game with Bo. Bo's in tune on everything going on.
Oh, yeah.
I will end it with this. When you talk about pushing and shoving, Vinny might know the answer. If he doesn't, he would. Vinny had a former teammate who was in the locker room after the game. Okay, not a current member of the Eagles, a former member of the Eagles, who I haven't seen in a long time. Who's one of the great pushers and shovers that I have covered during my 13 years on the beat. I don't want to drag this on until 1:30 a.m. So I'll just give you context clues. He played cornerback for the Eagles, and he was a fun guy to cover. Was always honest, and there you go. Kerry Williams was there. It was good seeing
Kerry Williams.
Good seeing Kerry Williams.
Wisconsin.
Kerry Williams was there. Yeah, Wisconsin's
I
Brendan
love Kerry
Graham brought him
Williams.
into. Yeah, Brendan Graham brought him into the locker room, and I went right up. And
Really?
Kerry was probably like, "Why is this? Yeah, why is this little guy coming right up to me?" But yeah, I said, "Kerry, Zack Berman, great to see you again." Yeah,
That's great. I love that.
was he here for Vinny Curry night?
Yeah, I guess that shit.
Was he here for Vinny Curry night?
Come on
He
now.
guessed it right away.
How did I mean?
I have
Yeah.
one more question for both of you then. In the very
Yeah.
beginning of that podcast that we referenced earlier, the one from 10 years ago, Zack is not a part of it in any way. And yet his name comes up in the first 3 minutes because I am relaying the story that the night before, apparently, Zack mentions that he and Vinny went to dinner at the same place. They ran into each other. Do either of you remember where that was?
Vinny won. I know exactly where that was. Yeah, I remember exactly where
Feels
that
like a
was
theme
because
with you,
I have a fun. Yeah, it was at Raw Sushi. Okay, and this was probably 2014.
Correct.
If memory serves. And I was dating my wife at the time, and she had like a pet peeve that like people would, because at the time I was on TV like once a week, and so I guess like
Now you're on
people were
6 times
starting
a
to
week.
like recognize my face. Yeah, people were starting to recognize my face a bit, and so like we would be out to eat, and like people would like come up to the dinner table and say hello, and you know me, like I'm talking to everybody, and like, oh, what's your name, that kind of thing, and she would get really annoyed, and so Vinny, being the nicest player in the world, we're leaving, and she doesn't know Vinny's a player. She's not an Eagles fan, right? And so we're leaving, and Vinny comes and says hello, and she's like, to me, she's like, does this guy really have to interrupt us? And I'm like this guy. I was like, I promise you, everyone in this restaurant knows who he is. They don't know who I am. So yeah, I remember that well. It was Raw. It was Raw on what, 12th and Sansom?
Man,
Does that sound
was my
right?
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
You
good
said you
spot.
were just getting into sushi.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was just getting an Emoy, so that was the.
Oh no!
I mean, like, all right, don't take that the wrong way. I mean, we had just started dating. That was the kind of thing I meant. Sorry. Yeah, don't misinterpret that anyway. But all right, I'm gonna go right. Okay. Please don't misinterpret that. Don't get me in trouble back home. All right, that's nothing. All right. Mature up in there, guys. Come on, mature up. Mature up.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah. That was not meant to be a joke.
Anything else for the game, Zach? Ladies and gentlemen,
What's your story tomorrow?
Zach Berman.
My story tomorrow.
Nobody better.
So
You don't have to say anything else. We'll check out allphly.com to read it.
Thank you. It'll be up in the morning.
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
I'm giving myself a 4 a.m. deadline. All right, guys.
Oh, you're the best.
We all silly like the mayor.